A very warm welcome to today's webinar, brought to you by Shared Services Link and sponsored by AccessPay. Today we're looking at how to reduce the cost of cross-border payments, and this is very much a webinar that provides pertinent information for corporate treasurers. So, presenting your lineup for today, my name is Susie West and I'm the founder and CEO at Shared Services Link. And I am hosting today's webinar and very pleased to be introducing as our guest speakers Ali Moed, who is the CEO at AccessPay, and with him Neil Gray, who is Senior Sales Manager, Corporate Business EMEA at Swift. So let's have a look at the agenda for the next 60 minutes. I'm going to be touching very briefly on the context of this webinar and then handing over to our two presenters. So we're going to be having an overview from Neil and then an overview from Ali, and then looking to take your questions, please, and looking to close on the hour. Just to remind you how the questions work, it is very important that you put your questions to me nice and early, please. And then if you submit them to me via the box that's highlighted here, and then I will put those questions to our two guest speakers in the last 10 minutes of the webinar. So let's have a look at the context before we ask our first poll question of the day. So increasingly, shared services organisations are seeing themselves having global footprints. They are less and less country focused and in-country shared services organisations, and increasingly they are either becoming regional or global shared services organisations. And we all are very familiar that shared services organisations are moving towards a construct known as global business services. And what this means is that the shared services organisations are therefore having to manage global banking relationships. And as everyone is familiar on this call, there isn't really one bank out there that has a global reach. So we have all these multiple relationships with multiple banking partners to really support our global operations. And this is very hard for us to manage in a kind of a standardized or automated way. So shared service organisations obviously have a real desire to automate and simplify and standardise. So what we're looking at here is specifically how that can be done within the banking relationships. Right, just before I hand over to our first speaker, Neil Gray, I would like to please launch our first poll question. We have 3 poll questions coming up today. So let me start with the first one coming up on your screen, please. How many banking relationships do you currently manage? Is it 1? Is it 2 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 or more, or other? We typically like to get to about 70% or more in terms of participation for these poll questions, and of course we do share the results directly after we ask these questions, so it's great for benchmarking purposes. We're at 53% of you responding, so if you haven't already responded, please do so. I'll be closing the poll shortly. How many banking relationships do you currently manage? Is it 1, 2 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 or more, or other? Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. We're at 63% of you responding there. So let's have a look at the data. So none of you have just 1. So that's, I think that's really kind of links in with what we were just talking about there as far as the context of this webinar. 70% of you have 2 to 5 and 30% of you have 6 or more. So interesting results there. Now I'd like to hand over to our first guest speaker, please. Over to you, Neil Gray.
Hello. So for my part in today's webinar, what I plan to share with you is the work that Swift is doing to provide corporates with a single standardized channel for both payment flows as well as bank account reporting. All this now being available in the cloud. In terms of the specific topics that I'd like to cover, I'll be describing how Swift can streamline bank communications for corporates. We'll take a quick look at the take-up to date in the market, and then we'll be looking at a typical systems implementation at a corporate and the payment and reporting flows that can be achieved. Then I'll describe the latest cloud-based offering for connecting to SWIFT. We'll look at the characteristics of that model, and then I'll go into some detail about the solution that we're providing in partnership with AccessPay. And then finally, I'll point you at some sources of further reading if whatever I've said is interesting and you'd like to explore further. So let me then start firstly with a few words on SWIFT and the proposition that we have for corporates. So SWIFT, the acronym actually stands for the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications. We're headquartered in Brussels, and we've got offices in most of the major financial centers all over the world. If you were to try and summarize the organization into 3 key statements, it would probably be something along these lines. The first thing to comment on is that we're not a true commercial organization, and what I mean by that is that we're not profit-driven. We are instead a not-for-profit company. We are classified as a cooperative, and we are there to serve the financial industry at large with a variety of different services, and we've been doing that since the early 1970s. So I mentioned that we're providing services to the financial services industry. Well, what are those services? The one that we're most well known for is that we run a global financial network, and across that network we run a variety of different messaging services that allow our members to exchange transactions and reports with each other, and these different messaging services have different characteristics in terms of what you want to achieve, either sending small, relatively small structured messages, perhaps sending large files of data, or perhaps having a more conversational, interactive dialogue. And then the final thing to say about SWIFT is that we are a standards body. We are in fact the financial standards body for the financial services industry. To date, we have close to 11,000 customers connected to our network, and they are using the network to exchange somewhere in the region of 17 million messages with each other each day across some 214 countries. The network is known for its robustness, its resilience, and its so-called 5 nines availability. So that's a few words on SWIFT. What is it then that we do specifically in the corporate to bank space? Well, I think this picture quite neatly summarizes the position that most corporates find themselves in. As we saw in the short poll just a few moments ago, most corporates are multi-banked. They're not using a single bank, they're using a collection of banks. And as you can see, each bank traditionally would have offered its own proprietary ways into that bank, their own proprietary channels. So very often a bank would offer an e-banking system, what's often referred to these days as an online banking system. In some cases, the bank may offer a host-to-host connection, more of a direct file-based connection into the bank. And very often, the banks would offer both. So you can see that from the point of view of the multi-banked corporate, they can end up with a plethora of different systems, all potentially running on different technologies, different platforms, each connecting via different communications methods, perhaps a leased line, maybe a dial-up connection. Very often, of course, these days, the connection is across the internet. Each system would have its own username and passwords. Very often, you know, these days, everyone needing to be conscious of security, the banks offer some additional level of security, perhaps a smart card and reader, maybe some sort of token device, an RSA device, some sort of additional security to accompany the basic username and password model. Then when we look at the systems, the way you actually enter, verify, release payment flows on those systems will vary very much from bank system to bank system. Also, when you're looking at the balance and transaction information that's provided by the banks visually on the screen, the look and presentation of that data will be very specific to each given bank. And of course, very often the corporates don't just want to see this data visually on the screen. They want to actually feed the data back into their back office systems, either for accounts payable and receivable or perhaps in the treasury space. And then the way that that data can be exported and uploaded into the back office will be very specific to each system. So as you can see, I'm painting here a picture that's less than ideal. No one is suggesting that the individual systems themselves are not good, but when working with multiple banks, no one wants a multitude of different systems. So if we then consider the SWIFT alternative, very simply what we are able to offer is the possibility for a corporate to use a single gateway, what I'm calling here a SwiftNet interface, that connects into one network, the SWIFT network, and as we've heard, a very secure, reliable, highly resilient network that spans the world, coverage in 214 countries, the world's major banks connected to it, so chances are it has the particular banks that any given corporate is working with connected to it. So in adopting SWIFT, the corporate has the possibility to streamline their bank communications and the infrastructure and technology that they need to communicate with their various banks down to a single platform connecting via one network, one security standard, and gaining access to all of their banks. And that reduction in infrastructure and technology can lead to reduced costs because there's less infrastructure and technology to maintain. It leads to reduction in risk because everything is controlled in a well-managed, well-run way in one single centralized place. It leads to improved controls. Corporates end up with better controls over their outbound payment flows. They have better visibility of and more timely visibility of their balance and transaction information that's being received from their banks. And finally, often gives them a tick in the compliance box. The auditors tend to like SWIFT. It's seen as secure and reliable, so it can help on that front too. So for me, I would say it's these two pictures that really encapsulate what SWIFT is all about in the corporate space. Moving away from a model where corporate has multiple bank proprietary connections to communicate with their various banks to a model where they have one single standardized, if I can call it, bank agnostic connection to communicate with their different banks. So if that's what the proposition is all about, where do we stand today in terms of take-up in the market? So the bar chart on the left actually shows the take-up over the last 6 years or so. And you can see year on year we've typically added between 150 and 200 new corporates. We finished last year, 2013, just above the 1,200 mark. And I'm told that midway through this year we've added more than 100 new corporates since then. So today the latest figure is in excess of 1,300 corporates worldwide. Now, those 1,300 corporates typically represent some sort of centralized treasury or shared service center function within the corporate group. And we've actually estimated that those figures actually represent nearer to 30,000 individual corporate entities that are typically served by this SWIFT corporates model. The pie chart on the right shows the geographic location of those corporates. So you can see very clearly that the vast majority of those corporates today are in EMEA, and probably it's fair to say that even within EMEA, I would say Europe is probably the dominant location. The slide does rather give the impression that the Americas and Asia Pacific is lagging behind a little bit, or at least that SWIFT is not so popular there. Actually, that's not true at all. All the time we are signing up very impressive new corporates in the Americas as well as in Asia. It just so happens that as fast as my colleagues are signing up corporates in their regions, in their respective regions, we in Europe are keeping pace with them. So while the pie is actually growing in size, those proportions haven't changed dramatically. Also, I can say that more than 10% of the SWIFT membership these days is now made up of corporates, and I'm very excited by that. If we then look at the types of corporates that we have connected to the SWIFT network and look at them in a number of ways, I think there's some interesting things to be gleaned here as well. If we look at the donut on the left-hand side, you can see from the blue and the red segments that some 60% or more of the corporates that we have on the network to date are in the sort of large and multinational category, with turnovers either between $1 and $10 billion per annum, or even above $10 billion. So, not surprisingly, this proposition is this whole SWIFT proposition is very attractive to the large multinationals. But I think what's also interesting, if we look at the green segment, is that some 40% of the corporates that we have on SWIFT are less than $1 billion, typically 300, 400, 500 million and above, more what I would classify as the mid-tier. So it's certainly wrong to think that it's a proposition that's purely for the very largest of corporate players. More and more we're seeing mid-tier corporates also taking advantage of SWIFT. Now, if we look at the donut on the right, this is looking at corporates in terms of number of banking groups. And I've mentioned already that a large part of the rationale of moving to SWIFT is channel rationalization. So it does rather suggest that the more banking relations you have, the more valuable the SWIFT solution is. And while that's certainly true, and you can see on the right-hand side of the donut that very many corporates are using SWIFT to talk to 10, 20, 40, in some cases even hundreds of their banking partners around the world, you can see from the pale blue segment on the left that actually the vast majority of the corporates that we have on SWIFT today are in the 1 to 5 banking group segment. They're using SWIFT to communicate with only a relatively small number of banks. And I was very interested to see the poll at the beginning of this webinar. You know, it seemed to me that, again, the majority of the listeners today have or are working with between 2 and 5 banking groups. So you can see, if you were to look at SWIFT, you'd be in very good company. So how does the whole proposition work? Well, the corporates that join SWIFT are actually allocated their own business identifier code, or what is these days known as a BIC. Now, you may be familiar with BICs in the banking context. You may have seen things like, not to single out any particular banks, but just by way of an example, you may have seen a BIC like BARC GB22 for Barclays, or Citi US 33 for Citibank. Well, just to be really clear, corporates that join SWIFT actually get their own BIC that will uniquely identify the corporate on the network. It's essentially the address. It represents, if you like, the address of the corporate on the SWIFT network, and allows, and it's needed to identify the corporate as either the sending or the receiving party in any SWIFT exchange. So let's then take a look at what a typical system implementation and the typical message flows that we see for a corporate using SWIFT. So very often corporates in their back office will run a number of different systems. Typically in the treasury department they'll run a TMS, or treasury management system. More commonly in accounts payable, accounts receivable, corporates will run maybe one or maybe even a multitude of different ERP systems, and here I'm thinking of things like SAP or Oracle, etc. So corporates will have a variety of different systems in their back offices. And then what the AccessPay solution provides is a very neat payment approvals and authorization capability, as well as cash management dashboard that can often be useful to complement or enhance the capabilities of the current back office systems. And then what would be needed is a SWIFT interface that then hosts the corporate's BIC, as we just discussed, and provides the physical connection into the SWIFT network, and then the possibility to communicate with the different banking partners that any given corporate is working with. And typically what we see is a variety of different flows are then possible. Either typically more in the treasury space, the corporate can send individual payment instructions, typically single, urgent, high-value treasury style payments. They could receive balance and transaction reporting either end of day, but increasingly we see that coming intraday from their different banks. Many corporates use SWIFT to exchange FX and money market deal confirmations with their banking counterparties. And then more on the payables and receivables side, the payments tend not to be sent individually, but are bulked into files of bulk payments, typically covering credit transfers or direct debits. These can then be delivered also over the SWIFT network, and these can be in any format, typically domestic, ACH type format. They can be in legacy formats like Edifact, PayMall, etc. And increasingly we're seeing the more sort of leading edge corporates adopting the latest ISO 20022 XML standards for those communications. So if that is the systems infrastructure that a typical corporate might want to implement, what's really new here, and this is kind of one of the things that we're trying to bring across in this webinar, is that all of that functionality, the AccessPay, payment authorization approval, as well as cash management dashboard, combined with the SWIFT interface, is now all available, seamlessly linked together and available through the cloud. So with that, it's probably appropriate to look a little bit more closely at this whole topic of cloud-based connectivity to SWIFT. So how then are we positioning cloud-based connectivity to SWIFT? Essentially, we believe that the solution provides a cost-effective and yet full-featured, secure, cloud-based way of connecting into the SWIFT network. It's fast and easy for corporates to implement, and it provides a very light footprint for the end customer. Now, the reason I labor the full-featured is because very often, you'll hear product names like Alliance Lite 2, and these, because it has the word light in it, it often gives the impression that it's some sort of entry-level, very basic way of connecting to SWIFT. Actually, nothing is further from the truth. It really is a full-featured SWIFT interface, a best-in-class solution that offers all of the messaging and SWIFT capabilities that a customer would expect. So let's carry on with trying to characterize this solution. As I've mentioned already, we believe it's the easiest way for corporates to connect to SWIFT. It provides a very light footprint for the end customer. There's very little for the customer to actually run, operate, or manage. It's all being done for the customer in the cloud. The solution is reliable, secure, and it's delivered with a full service and support offering. So there's very little actually for the corporate to get involved in. We actually get involved in all of the setup and configuration of the solution, tailored to the specific needs of the particular customer. The solution supports both manual and automated modes of operation, and what I mean by that is that you can interact with it via the screen and keyboard, but also have exchanges automated with the back office systems. And from a commercial point of view, it's offered at a very low setup fee as well as the ongoing monthly subscription fees. The solution is fast, secure, and cost-effective. It's available for all new joiners to SWIFT, including the typical corporate joiners that we see today. As I mentioned already, it comes with a full setup service. Despite being cloud-based, there's a strong focus on security and reliability. There's nothing in terms of software or infrastructure for the customer to maintain. And as I've touched on already, the solution covers all of the different SWIFT message standards, whether it be the FIN-MT ones or the latest XML, and it covers all of the SWIFT messaging services that any corporate would want, including FIN and FileNet. So let's now take a look at the specific solution that we're offering for AccessPay. So the picture on the left shows shows a high-level sort of system architecture view. So if we consider first the outbound flows, and what I mean by this is the corporate-to-bank flows, then the corporate customer is able to, down at the bottom of the screen, is able to use his regular desktop PC running, for example, Internet Explorer, and through the web browser only, so no software to install, purely through the web browser, the customer, the corporate, is able to access the AccessPay payment authorization and cash management system that's delivered to him seamlessly through the cloud. So he's able to, through his web browser, create, verify, authorize payment transactions, and as a result of that workflow, the AccessPay system then creates files, either files of individual payment transactions or files of bulk payments. These are then handed over to what we're calling a Swift bridge, which has been installed and set up in the AccessPay cloud, that then delivers those files of transactions seamlessly and securely through a VPN connection, a Swift VPN connection, to the Swift interface that is actually running within Swift's operating centers. And it's there at that interface that the end customer's BIC is hosted, and then from there actually the individual transactions, messages, as well as files of transactions can be sent over the Swift network, as I've explained before, to the receiving banks. So a very neat solution in that the corporate is essentially working entirely through a web browser using the very neat and graphical capabilities of the AccessPay application to create transactions and then have those delivered seamlessly into the interface and out over Swift to the banks. If we then look at it on the inbound side, in other words, the bank to corporate direction, banks sending end-of-day statements as well as intraday transaction reports can deliver these addressed to the corporate's BIC over the Swift network in the normal way. These messages and files will then be received into the Swift interface running in our operating centers. And then as a result of routing rules that we would have set up at configuration and setup time, we can deliver all of that data seamlessly and securely across the Swift bridge into the AccessPay system, where the data can then be presented to the corporate, viewing it within his web browser in a consolidated and holistic fashion. So we believe this is a very, very neat solution. The corporate gets to work with a very modern payment and cash management application through his device of choice, desktop, but also smartphones or tablet devices, and then any transmissions that then subsequently need to happen across the Swift network happen seamlessly in background without the corporate needing to manage any infrastructure at his end. So I hope that was clear. Let me then bring things to a close by trying to summarize this whole topic of cloud-based connectivity to Swift. As I say, we believe that our solution represents a best-in-class Swift interface that just happens to be running in the cloud. It includes a fully integrated service offering, so the interface is already coupled with the AccessPay application, so it's already there and ready for end customers to use. There's no heavy footprint for the customer to maintain. It's all being managed on behalf of the corporate by Swift and AccessPay in the cloud. It offers all of the Swift functionality that a corporate would need, covering all of the different FIN message types and all of the different messaging services, including FIN and FileAct, that are typically used in the corporate-to-bank context. And then from a commercial point of view, there's no heavy investment involved. the upfront as well as the ongoing fees are very attractive, we believe. So if any of that sounds interesting, I would point you at this particular website, swift.com/corporates. You'll find lots of white papers guiding you through the process of joining SWIFT, implementing FIN, implementing File Act. It talks about the different standards that are in use. It mentions the different partners that we work with, including AccessPay. It talks about the different banks that support the SWIFT for Corporates model. So lots of interesting reading for anyone who would like to explore this topic some further. And finally, my contact details. As I hope you found this interesting, and welcome you to contact me separately if you'd like to discuss any of that further. So with that, I'll hand back to Susie.
That's great. Many thanks indeed, Neil. So before I hand over to Ali from AccessPay, let me just put two other poll questions to you, please. So coming up on your screen now, do you use proprietary banking portals to enter information today? If you could tick the box that's most appropriate to you, please. Yes, mainly. Yes, in part. No, or perhaps you're not sure. So just to repeat that, do you use proprietary banking portals to enter information today? Yes, mainly. Yes, in part. No, and if you're not sure, just tick the not sure box for me. 57% of you have voted, so if you haven't already done so, please do cast your vote, and closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're at 71% of you responding there, so results coming up on your screen. And you can see the results here. So 27% of you say yes, you do use a proprietary banking portals in the main to enter information. 40% of you in part, and 33% of you not sure. Encouragingly, none of you said no, not at all. Okay, let's move to the second poll within this particular section, coming up on your screen now. How many payment instructions per month do you initiate? So how many payment instructions per month do you currently initiate? Is it 1 to 500, 501 to 2000, or 2001 or more? We're at 43% of you responding, so if you haven't already done so, please do so. How many payment instructions per month do you currently initiate? 1 to 500, 501 to 2000, 2001 or more. 71% of you responding there. It's closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. So coming up on your screen now, 76% of you responding as we close that poll. So 38% of you have initiate payment instructions to the tune of 1 to 500 a month. 25% of you initiate 500 to 2,000 payment instructions on a monthly basis, and 38% of you initiate 2001 or more. So thank you very much for that. Now I'd like to hand over to Ali Moid from AccessPay. Over to you, please, Ali.
Thank you, Susie. Hello. I'm going to talk about who AccessPay are and re-emphasize from Neil's perspective on what our proposition is. And I'll quickly sort of dive into a quick demo of our solution. So AccessPay, before we get into the AccessPay, just want to set the scene in terms of agenda. So it's about us. I'm going to cover about us, some of our accreditations, our proposition, and benefits from benefits and values that our customers have received from AccessPay solution. There aren't many slides here, so I'll be quite quick, and then we'll dive into the product demo. So in terms of who we are spread across in 5 different countries. Our development center being in India, our support being in Manchester. We have a presence in San Francisco. We have our HQ in London, and we have our another presence in Luxembourg for our mainland Europe. 87 employees, 500-ish happy customers, and so far we have processed around 615 million GBP value transactions. Now moving to our accreditations, we have just recently been awarded as Oracle Gold Partner. Our solution, we call our solution as bank grade secure solution, and the reason why we say that is because we are FCA regulated payment institution. We have ISO 27001 as accreditation, and we also have SAS 70 and now SAS 16 for the US based accreditations. Apart from that, we are SWIFT partner for the new cloud initiative. We also process BACS, faster payments, SEPA, and ACH payments as well. In terms of market sectors that we have covered so far, so we pretty much serve all sorts of sectors. And the reason why customers have actually chose us is because, number one, our solution reduces their cost. So how does that happen is that there is zero or minimal capex. So there's no software to install, as we mentioned. It's all cloud-based, zero footprint, and it's highly secured. So it's not relying on internal security. We have a lot of security in our data centers, and we follow a lot of risk control procedures because we are regulated by FCA as well. In terms of improving business agility is because we also provide agile solutions. So although it's a shrink wrap solution, but from case by case, we do change our solutions. In terms of market sectors, we've served all these different types of market sectors, including retail, banking. We are working majorly with some banks in the UK and Europe as our customers and also as our partners. So what are the sort of key benefits or drivers, I would say, when making a decision for customers in going ahead with AccessPay? So out of the many that's shown on the deck, I'll focus on three very important ones. One is no end of life. So because we don't provide a software, we provide a service. We do not force end of life for our customers. We do not send end of life threats or emails saying that the software is not going to work and they need to upgrade and renegotiate a contract and renegotiate the terms. It's affordable, low-cost subscription value paid on a monthly basis, and we don't do vendor locking. Basically means that there are no long-term contracts to sign. And secondly, minimal or no capex, so there's no hardware, servers required. And the third very, very important aspect is that the DR is included. We have multi-tenant environment on our cloud platform, and it's fully resilient, and it has all sorts of DR capabilities. So when we did an internal polling with our sort of customers, why AccessPay? So some of the things that have come out is we do rapid implementation, so it's not like months and months. It's rather days and weeks. And because it's a cloud-based platform, we don't have to send out engineers. So our support is pretty much done on the phone. We've always had 100% uptime, but we would say 99.99% uptime. And it's 24/7 accessible. It's a cloud-based technology. You're not locked into a PC or an operating system, and it can be accessible anywhere. So in terms of our solutions, I'd like to focus on 4. So yes, BACS, SEPA, and faster payments in the UK, direct debit management. And the two key for today's session are the straight-through processing using the Swift ASP or the cloud model and the corporate cash management. So just going a little bit more into each of them. So the slide about the next one is basically focusing on the BACS connectivity. It's a very simple solution. We connect with BACS for making UK payments. And in terms of our features for that is that in a similar manner as how we connect to BACS, we connect to faster payments, SEPA, and SWIFT. So in terms of dwelling into the features, so we have BACS and faster payments approved. We have bank grade security. It involves simple file submission. So basically, it's straight through processing, which means that we connect with your ERP, then take data from your ERP and submit it straight to BACS or SWIFT. And there are some optional modules on our solution. So moving on to the next slide, I would like to focus on our SWIFT initiative. So you probably see on the left-hand side of the slide, sorry there's a little bit of a delay on the slide, but you'll see on the left-hand side of the slide some solutions. So it could be your ERP software, your finance software, your payroll software, or your banking software. And in the center you see our AccessPay cloud. So what we are trying to show on this deck is that irrespective of what solutions you have, we can integrate with any of those solutions, and depending on which bank you are integrating with, we would provide you a seamless straight-through processing from your ERP into your banking software, into your banking applications through Swift. Again, moving on to the next slide, some solution features of our Swift application. So we manage multiple accounts in multiple currencies. We handle multiple file types, multiple format conversion. So this is our key USP. So your files can come from any TMS, any ERP into our application, and we don't expect you to change your file types. We can take any file types and convert it into the format that Swift would want, or it could be empty format, or BACS format, or ISO 222 for SEPA. So we can convert that into any format. And through our straight-through processing capabilities, we would replace any manual rekeying of information into these multiple banking portals by automating that process for you by integrating it straight from your ERP, taking that information and sending it to the bank. And again, last but not the least is maximizing your cache visibility. So we download automatically. So we would pull your MT940 and 942s into our application and show you a graphical view of what your cache is and what your bank positions are, cash positions are in your different banks. So just to summarize our solution, moving on to the next slide is, so within the AccessPay solution set, we have faster payments. And when I say faster payments, it's basically faster payments in terms of UK faster payments and also European faster payments as well. Swift connectivity, direct debit management, both BACS and SEPA, and cache visibility through our multi-bank cash management module. So now I would move on to my demo, very quick demo of the application. Thank you, Susie. Okay. So, so this is how very quickly how the interface would look like. Very dashboard driven, very graphical, and every user in the organization can basically have their own type of dashboard. So a treasurer might want to see their cash position, so that sort of dashboard can be shown. But for a AP or an AR person, they might want to see payments in and out sort of dashboard. So again, these are very self-customizable. We can set it up for you, so the system comes by default with around 23 of these reports and dashboards. And you can set as many as you want. So here you can see the bank balance of your different banks. You can click on any of this, and it dials straight into what made that sort of pie chart. So you can actually see all these different banks you have. Lloyd's Bank, you have 3 accounts and 3 different branches, all multi-currency, but it's rolled up back to GBP as a base currency. You can set up any base currencies. Our system supports around 16 multi-currency, 16 different currencies, and they can all be rolled up into a base currency using an exchange rate component. So again, you can basically see your total balance in all your banks or your individual banks. Now, before I go further into the solution, just want to highlight the top tabs. So it's really simple. Beneficiaries is a tab that stores all the payments that you've made to a person or a company or a bank. Payment files are the file that comes into our system through your ERPs. Again, you can upload a file, you can pick a file, or you can actually do ad hoc payments. So you can enter an ad hoc payment. Corporate bank accounts is the section where all your bank accounts are listed. And statements are all your MT9, 49, 42, and then the reports. So I'll quickly go into the corporate bank account section. Again, if I want to see all my bank accounts, I can click on all and click on go. Once the bank account section is loaded, I can actually start seeing my different type of accounts: investment account, deposit account, savings account, salary account, payroll account, all my different banks, my big code, and then I can see a little bit of higher level overview of what my bank balance is, my prior day available balance, my current day debits, current day credits, prior day debits and credits, and current day available balance and the currency. But imagine you don't want, let's say you don't want all of this view, you just want a trimmed down version. I just want to show you the power of the system that you can very quickly, without raising any support tickets, you can go onto the system and you can say, okay, fine, I don't want all of these fields. I just want to see current day debits, current day credits, and I want to make this view available to all my users. Click on save, and then very quickly the view gets changed and you see fewer number of columns over here. So now let's say you want to get into a particular bank account to see what's happening inside. So I'll click on the expense account of RBS. I can see my higher level details. I can see my prior day balance, current day balance over here. And I can start seeing all my payment files that have come into the system. I can see all my transactions that have been processed, that have been paid. I can see all my statements. And then we have simple to complex approval logics. So you can set up 4 eyes, 2 eyes, all these different type of approvals on a bank account or on a bank or on a particular organization. I'll quickly go into reports and show you how easy the reporting functionality is. So let's say we go into my top available bank balance. So these are all my, some of my banks with some top available balance for today. And it shows me all these columns. So bank, bank branch, balance, big, current day available balance, and current day credits. But let's say I want a little bit more information. So you don't need to learn crystal reports or any sort of programming. It's very drag and drop. You can customize the report and you can say, okay, I want my credit fields, as I want my current day credits, just double click. I want my debit fields, I want my current day debit, just double click. And you see over here, all those columns have started to be added. Okay, they all rolled up to GBP, but you can also see individual balances and individual currency. Again, I'm not happy with my bar graph. I want to change that to pie chart, for example, and I can quickly change that to pie chart. Okay, and I can do some formatting, and I can say I want to show some values on my pie chart. Click on OK. And that's it, and you can run a report, and very quickly you've changed the whole thing in less than 2 minutes. Again, to end this conversation, we can spend a lot of time over here because there's a lot of features that I can show you. But I just wanted to give you a glimpse of how the application works. We have mobile apps on BlackBerry, iPhone, and Android, all bank-grade security with two-factor authentication, and you can restrict users from this application to download a mobile app or not. And there is a lot of admin control in terms of who can access the system, when can they access the system, how can you restrict that, look at all the login history, single sign-on functionality, or even expiring passwords and all that sort of thing. So I thank you for all your time, and handing it over to Susie.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Ali, so now let's move through to questions. I've already got quite a few questions from you, but if you would like to make sure that your question comes through, please do so. Submit it now. One of the questions that I've got for you, Ali, is as far as on the screen that you had where you were showing the kind of the totals for each of the the banks that you had listed there. Do you have a facility that illustrates the totals?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we could, apologies, I went very quickly, but we show totals of a particular bank balance, and we show the details of how the total have been made on a day-by-day basis. So yes, yeah, absolutely, that's the key to show totals.
Okay, and also a question on where the payment instructions actually come from. Do the payment instructions come from the ERP, or do they come from the solution itself?
Both. So we support, like Neil said, ad hoc payments. So you can use this as a terminal to input ad hoc payments. But majority of our customers benefit from straight-through processing, which means that we can take payments from the ERP into the system directly. But our solution supports both ad hoc payments and payment from ERP.
Okay, so if payments do come from the solution, then could you talk a little bit more about the security and the access? How do you make sure that people who are authorized to make payment are the only ones that have access to the solution?
Absolutely. So we have a very role profile-based application. So the administrator can create roles in the system and profiles and give permissions to different people within the roles. So the roles could be, let's say, a submitter role, and you drag and drop users into the submitter role, and then you can set permissions from the submitter role that only users having submission facility can log into the system and create ad hoc payments. You could even restrict users based on a criteria or financial criteria. So you could say you could be a submitter, but you can't submit payments more than $50,000 or 6,000 euros. And you can create different categories of different users of different types of submission and approval processes in the system.
Okay, and also, is there a security around obviously kind of passwords and then device? I mean, obviously the password, but kind of the device that they're using, the geographical location that they're based within. Is that's I guess there's various security layers that look for all of that as well. Yeah,
absolutely. So we just to stress on this that we do software-based security, and we also do 3S key-based security as well on the system.
Okay, good. So now let's come to Neil, please. Does Swift have a mobile-specific website or iOS, Android, BlackBerry applications to access the functionality of the platform?
Yes, through us. Yeah. So we sorry, this one, Neil.
Go ahead, Alex.
So yeah, so we have apps on BlackBerry, Android, and iOS. It's not the Alliance Lite, not the Swift app. It's our app coupled in with the Swift app functionality. So it's one app coupled in with the Swift functionality.
Okay, Neil, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah. So as Ali mentioned, the way we envisage the model working is that the corporates would spend most of their time actually working within the AccessPay application, and that is delivered through any device of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's only when transactions are generated as a result of the workflow that they're then passed into Swift, and Swift kind of almost acts as a black box. It is possible for users to access the Swift interface directly, and that can be done through the web, but today it's limited to PC access only.
Okay. As far as implementation is concerned then, Ali, I mean, you're talking about kind of weeks rather than months. Could you just talk about a typical implementation from a cycle perspective, but also who in the organization should be involved in the implementation?
Oh, very good. Okay. So basically the solution is ready. So it's cloud-based. A customer can sort of sign up and take a demo and that sort of thing. Where the real time actually gets spent is getting the banks onboarded to the platform. So if the corporate already have a BIC from Swift and they're using a bureau, then that speeds up the time because the bank is already onboarded. But if that's not the case, and if they are manually entering information onto the banking portal, then the banks needs to be onboarded. So this depends on the relationship of the corporates with the bank, but generally banks are very flexible in terms of, because the banks wants transaction. So for them, the more easier they make for their corporates, the better for them as well. So in our opinion, generally a bank takes 2 to 3 weeks for onboarding. It takes around 3 to 5 weeks for Swift membership. And all of these threads, we run it in parallel. So we don't do one after the other. So we run it in parallel. We want to understand how many banks the corporate would have. But typical, I would say a project would take 2 to 3 months. If it's complex banks. But if the bank's already set up, it's just the bank that takes the time, not the solution.
Okay. And Ali, what would you say are the best practices to follow to implement successfully?
Absolutely. So the first thing I would very, very encourage is to understand and see what what are they currently doing. So in terms of manually inputting the information into the portal. So yes, what we normally, when we go and speak to customers, we try to understand what the ERPs are and what are the current manual processes and how do we actually automate those manual processes. The first thing we would suggest is to look for the corporates to look into those processes, to look at the time that they're spending and the security that is around those processes versus what the new way of working can sort of offer. So my suggestion would be is to first look into those type of processes, and then that will lead them forward to embrace the new straight-through processing methodology that we are proposing.
Okay. And Ali, where are most of your clients located, please?
Okay, so we specialize in the mid-tier to the large corporates. So generally our corporates are having offices UK, Europe, and US, but we are also working with corporates with offices in UK, Europe, and Asia as well. So the head of HQ are generally in UK, Europe, and US. That's where the HQ is, but the subsidiary offices are worldwide.
And obviously you're working a lot with shared services organizations. Why is that?
Sorry, say again, Susie?
Working with shared services organizations. Why is that?
So currently shared services organizations, our belief is that they have invested in shared services. So obviously there is some sort of an on-premise element, servers, hardware, software is running somewhere. And what we are trying to propose is that we could help these organizations by pushing them towards the new cloud way of working, where they don't have to manage these servers, softwares for this sort of Swift connectivity, and it is a lot cheaper as well.
Good, thank you very much indeed. We are out of time, so ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to contact Ali directly, following up on this and find out how you might go ahead and implement the AccessPay solution, please email him directly at ali@accesspay.com. Just to highlight to you some of the events that we've got coming up, please make a note that we've got the Global Process Owner event taking place in September. We've got a last few discounted tickets available for that, so please do contact Shared Services Link regarding that. An event on Global Business Services in Atlanta in October, and our VAT event taking place in November in London. And we've got a great webinar lineup for you over the next couple of months as well. So please go on to sharedserviceslink.com to find out more about those and to register. Many thanks for your time and attention today, and we look forward to welcoming you next time. Thank you and goodbye.